volumes of this series are available from Ubel in Fontaine, and there are no Archon Quest or World Quest requirements to unlock them. Because this is an audiobook, footnotes will be read out as they appear to keep the flow of information smooth. And I lucked out this time! The description of both volumes is exactly the same. So, description. This text is also known as Leobranto Innamorato. The author of the first edition claims to have based this tale on a legendary story known throughout Khaenri'ahn, but there are none left who can verify this. It is an anthological work produced over several generations at this point. Volume 1. This is a story from very ancient times indeed. It is said that, in those days, birds had not yet split into domestic and wild kindreds. In those days, a crimson moon shone down upon the subterranean realm, and not the dark sun of latter days. Due to the kingdom's unique position, things from outside this world were always leaking into it. The kingdom's weapons would wipe out the calamities slipping in, but what of all the other objects? Such as, say, a child who may have come from some destroyed world. One of the sages spoke thusly to the great ruler. "O high lord of the nobles, a child once told me a tale of another world. Once upon a time there were sea people who believed that the gods came from the sea. Each time they discovered a shipwrecked person, they would treat them with the utmost honor, for they believed that the gods would take the form of the shipwrecked to investigate the mortal realm." The ruler replied, "I do not perceive your meaning, so do as you please." Naturally, no oceans in the traditional sense lay within the kingdom's borders. The earliest founders of the kingdom had once seen the majestic silhouettes of the mountains blur under the sun's searing glare, and the rippling reflections of the moonlight falling upon the sea's surface like a scattering of pearls. But at the time the story took place, only outsiders and those few who had left the kingdom on official duties and returned could describe such sights to the ruler. The ocean and the sea were often used as a metaphor for the space projected by the stars. In anticipation of the arrival at their kingdom of gods from beyond the so-called ocean, or rather the arrival of beings who could transcend the gods, they founded an organization, an orphanage, to take care of such children. In latter days, the orphans of the kingdom and those who wandered in from outside were accepted as well. The young Perinheri's first memory was that of being asked by the grown-ups to crawl through a dark corridor. This passage might have been a chimney for winter fires, for it was filled with coal ash, and there was not a single crack in it through which smoke or light could pass through. As he crawled, he would sometimes stumble in the pitch-black darkness. Fortunately, the corridor appeared designed for the passage of children in the first place, so the falls were not very painful. It also lacked any annoying cobwebs. When Perinheri reached the end at last, the exit had not opened yet. He knocked, only for the grown-ups to coldly ask, "Are you dead?" Well, how was he to reply if he was dead? But the grown-ups did not like this response. They kept asking the same question, until he at least shouted, "Yes, I'm dead!" The adults then asked, "Did you see it, then?" Perhaps it was the fear brought on by the darkness, combined with hunger and exhaustion, but Perinheri did indeed see an illusion. The crimson moon, hanging high in the pitch-dark night sky, suddenly turned around, revealing itself to be a titanic, horrified eye. The adults opened the door and embraced the soot-covered Perinheri. "You have traversed the fire of 2 worlds within the hearth, and here you are reborn." Though the crimson moon set and the dark sun descended into a yet darker dusk, that transcendental person from beyond, who the kingdom orphanage was awaiting, never arrived. But unusual individuals they had aplenty, and many of those who strode forth from the gates of that orphanage became great knights of the kingdom. Perinheri was, in his time, the leading figure amongst their ranks. That is, unless he were forced to compete with his best friend, Leobrant. They should have competed for glory and decided who was superior through the amount of honors they crowned themselves in, and in the number of goblets of fine wine downed during the festivities afterward. But for some reason, their rivalry would take a mortal turn. Volume 2. That day, the orphanage welcomed a new member. She was a beautiful young lady from a foreign land who claimed to be a noble princess. Her nation had been defeated by Deus Auri, and yet the daughter of a priestly line she remained and would not submit to the new god, and so she had drifted, wandering through the gates of their kingdom. She called herself Angelica, meaning one who is as a divine emissary. Note 1. Note that the ancient people of Liyue did not use such names. Now that I consider it, her name may have been Lady Miao Yin, Lady of Wondrous Sound, or Tianwang Nu, servant of Tianwang. End of note 1. Fair Angelica declared that she would only marry the mightiest knight in all the kingdom. Perinheri cared not a whit, but Leobrant was smitten with her. Angelica would often take walks near the Sea of Wells, and there she spoke much of the outside world to Leobrant. Perinheri would come along out of concern for his friend, and because suspicion was born in him sooner than curiosity, he would doubt her every word, yet wished that he might see these things one day. Angelica's arrival changed Leobrant altogether. He would cause trouble, looking for any provocation upon which to stake a duel against other knights. He would win all these bouts and turn to Angelica to show off his prowess. Yet all she ever gave him was a cool smile. For what great feat was it for a great runner if they raced a tortoise and triumphed? Njord, who walks with the dark sprites. Alf, the greatest warrior in the Universitas Magistrorum. Alberic, commander of half the knights. And Perinheri, the undefeated. Note 2. Dark Sprites. The Black Wolves of the first edition. Archaeological work on Khaenri'ahn indicates that this must have been a type of war beast created using alchemy. Alchemy and the Beastmaster Knights were a mainstay during the Crimson Moon dynasty, but interest in mechanical engineering during the Eclipse dynasty would cause it to fall behind. End of note 2. Angelica spoke thus of the mightiest figures in the kingdom as she saw them. Having fallen head over heels into the throes of love, Leobrant came to what was an all too reasonable conclusion for himself. People might call him a traitor or believe him mad, but even so he had no wish to hurt Perinheri. As for Perinheri, he believed that his best friend's madness would be cured, if only he could kill Angelica. In the midst of that most merciless of pursuits, the three left the kingdom's borders. At that very moment, Leobrant clutched his face, and the words escaping his mouth gradually grew more like the howling of a wild beast. The witch Angelica explained thus. Leobrant is the descendant of those who forsook their god and came to the kingdom. This is why the kingdom's obstinately pure-blooded aristocracy persists. This is the price of betraying your own god. As for you, Perinheri, you are one who drifted there, thus you bear no such curse. You may not have the nobility to shoulder a world, but you too have your own destiny. And as for me, I betrayed no one, not for a moment, until my god died, so I too bear this curse not. But you now see who I truly am, yes? The sun rose over the horizon at that moment, and Perinheri's blade slipped from his fingers, exhausted from the night-long battle. Covering his forehead with the back of his hand, he looked upon the sun for the first time. And when he glanced back at Angelica, he saw that she was neither a beautiful woman from Liyue, nor a wicked witch. I am freedom, that which has broken free of fate. This is what Leobrant sought in agony, but that which is now yours for the taking. There was nothing before Perinheri, only vast, empty land. Special thanks goes to Mr. Denon's Archaeological Studies into Khaenri'ahn, which inspired this work, first edition. Mr. Jean Fijac's continued writings and refinements, which have given this story its ending, second edition. Mrs. Jean Fijac and Mr. Jean Fijac Fils for their corrections of miscellaneous typos, third edition. A compilation of Carl Ingold's records from Investigations into an Abandoned City, 13th edition. Mr. Karasawa's Assistance in Natural History and Miscellaneous Studies, 14th edition. Mr. Yun's Notes on Liyue Culture, 15th edition. Thanks for listening. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. And if you want to hear what I read in the future, consider subscribing. Thank you to everybody who left comments while I was away. It was really sweet to come back to. Well, isn't this exciting? A story about Khaenri'ahn, right there! And there's so much to unpack. Okay, to start, I really want to see an animated short of that gate in Khaenri'ahn and all those calamities that came out. I mean, are those dark sprites black wolves like rift hounds? Or some other huge alchemical beast? And that orphanage, the House of the Hearth, had origins further back than I thought. Though I want to save commentary on the two dynasties until after I've read Kaya's and Arlecchino's stories, considering that they both have pupils that, when put together, make the 8-pointed star of Khaenri'ahn. Now, initially, I thought Perinheri's journey was about the Traveler. I forgot it was our Abyss twin who was first recorded in Khaenri'ahn 500 years ago, so it's about them. I wonder if they went through a ritual like Perinheri did. If that moon eye is a real thing, what would it seeing you actually do to you? Also, how about that moon being an eye, and a horrified one at that? As we all know, the real Teyvat is a wholesome world, and there couldn't be anything wrong with the actual moon in Teyvat's actual sky, right?
I have moonlit bamboo forest in the queue about that.
It's been confirmed for a long while that Teyvat's overworld sky isn't real. The image that comes to mind for me is that Teyvat's like a terrarium, a contained, controlled environment for growth. And speaking of control, it's a good thing the heavenly principles are literally asleep at the wheel. I'm concerned about our Abyss twin, though. Could they even join us if we leave? That made me think about how each of the characters in Perinheri ended up when they left the kingdom's borders. I want to say those borders aren't just the edges of the kingdom, but a metaphor for the edges of Teyvat itself. I feel a few big takeaways from this. Number 1. Leobrant's ending is a representation of the Khaenri'ahn's history. We've seen both this curse in action with the Carrie-Bear quests, and the Loom of Fate project, the continued rebellion and trying to break free from fate. Number 2. Perinheri's ending likely reflects the journey of our twin. Number 3. Angelica and her ending reflect, I just want to say Paimon. Her name, meaning as a divine emissary, is what reminded me of Paimon in particular. It's been heavily implied during the game that Paimon is at the very least a celestial agent of some kind. A divine emissary, if you will. The most recent example I remember is one of the Melusines seeing with her special sight that Paimon has a string going all the way up past the sky.
What do you mean by that?
And number 4, the end of it all. With my interpretation, the very last sentences mean that our twin saw what really lies outside of Teyvat. Nothing at all. Or, just a wild idea on my part, nothing that anyone who is part of Teyvat could perceive. If there was something outside, but there's some restriction that no one who's part of Teyvat could see it, then they would see nothing. Whether there's literally nothing, a wasteland, or something that our sibling wasn't allowed to see, they're all really interesting prospects. Who knows what lies outside our little enclosure? Thanks for stopping by, and I hope you have a great day.